I'm going to read the 11th tradition. Our public relation policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. If anyone here represents a media agency, please contact our program chair or at the registration desk. I will read the unity statement. The members of the North Central Indiana area of Narcotics Anonymous welcomes you to our annual Regrow with Love convention. We would like to thank you for joining us in the celebration of recovery. We are deeply grateful to Narcotics Anonymous and find joy in being able to express our gratitude here with you. In Narcotics Anonymous, we are certain that when we come together to share our lives and our love with each unconditionally, a miracle happens. Our recovery takes hard work, courage, and commitment. Those are the things that carry us through as we seek the spiritual growth that comes from working the 12 steps. Never alone. We do this together and for each other, knowing that we need each other, because more than anything else, we grow with love. The preface of the basic text begins, "The full fruit of labor, of love, lives in the harvest, and that always comes in the right season. For us, that season has come." I have someone read just for today.
I'm an addict called Dan.
Hi, Dan.
April 27th, meeting the day's challenge. The decision to ask for God's help is our greatest source of strength and courage. Talk about that in basic text, page 26. The challenge is everything that dares us to succeed. Things new and unfamiliar for those challenges, whether those things appear good or bad to us. We are challenged by obstacles and oppositions that we find ourselves in our new and difficult things, obstacles and oppositions, all are part of that lifelong life term. Living clean means learning to meet challenge. Many of us, consciously or unconsciously, took drugs to avoid meeting challenge. Many of us were equally afraid of failure and success. Each time we declined the day's challenge, we suffered a loss of self-esteem. Some of us used drugs to mask the shame we felt. Each time we did that, we became even less able to meet our challenges and more likely to be used. By working the NA program, we found that the tools we need to successfully meet any challenge. We come to believe in a power greater than ourselves, a power that cares for our will and our lives. We've asked that power to remove our character defects, those things that made our lives unmanageable. We've taken actions to improve our contact with that higher power. Through the steps, we've been given the ability to stop using drugs and start living. Each day, we are faced with new challenges, and each day, through working our program of recovery, we are given the grace to meet those challenges. So today, I will ask my higher power to help me squarely meet today's challenge.
Thanks, Dan. I'd like to introduce our first speaker for this workshop, and I'm addicted to service work. I met our first speaker a couple of years ago, and he's one of the people that I do know that are very dedicated to service in Narcotics Anonymous, as in his recovery. And I'll give you the first speaker, Cliff.
All right.
I'm Cliff, an addict.
Hi, Cliff.
And what Mo didn't tell you was she first met me at a service body. Wow. You know, I've heard this all weekend. I think it's just funny that, you know, I got asked to speak for this when I showed up, and somebody said, "Hey, speak on this." And you know, I, like so many other people, heard, you know, when I first got clean, when NA asks, you don't say no. I mean, you know, if possible, don't say no. And so I said yes, and I kind of grumbled about it, and, you know, how the heck am I supposed to speak on that? Because I love service. You know, and I hope that nobody leaves this workshop thinking, I better stop doing service. Because, you know, some of the most spiritual experiences in my life have happened in service committees. And, you know, I want to talk about that for a second. because most things have a yin and a yang, a black or a white, or there's two sides to everything. And my spiritual experiences in service have come when I've allowed God to speak through group conscience. And there's just no describing that. If you've experienced it, you know what I mean. And it's just incredibly powerful. And I'm so incredibly grateful to the committees and the committee members who've been a part of that when I've experienced that. Unfortunately, the very few times that it's happened. I'm an addict. And fortunately, this fellowship talks about, addiction being a disease and not a substance or an action. In our text it says it well. We know the two things that make up true addiction: obsession and compulsion. And although I need service in my life, I need food in my life, I need relationships, friends, all these things, whether they be good or not, I can become, obsessed and act compulsively. And service is really easy. I have a friend who likes to say, good things come out of good things come out of self-will. And that's true. Some real good things come out of self-will. When I self-will things, sometimes good things come out of them, but not me. I'm not one of those things. And I guess that's the big thing that I want to key in on today, is that when I live in addiction, I one time I wanted to think that there was innocent obsession or justifiable compulsion. And the truth of the matter is today that I suffer no matter what. And suffering for me today doesn't have to be that my wife has left or that I don't have a home to live in. It can just be that, real uncomfortable feeling of being a little less a part of, society today. So, I need to be careful. And I guess, I think about some of the warning signs. There's definitely the obsession and compulsion, which I still have a hard time picking up on today. But, when I find myself acting like an addict, that's the only way I know how to describe it, is, have I been less than honest? And I'm not saying, like I'm wearing a blue shirt, that type of dishonesty, like, well, I have a blue shirt, and the truth of the matter is I don't have a blue shirt. Or when I find myself stealing, whether it be stealing the seven traditions, stealing the per diem, or stealing time from my family. Stealing is stealing is stealing is stealing. Have I taken something that doesn't belong to me, that wasn't mine to take? These, unfortunately, I come to these ends before, I find out that, addiction has taken hold in one of the best things in my life. And that's when, and I was in a workshop here today, and it was really powerful, and, and I hope you guys made it, or buy the tape and hear it, is, how do you spell relief? Surrender. It don't matter. There's no way for me to change my addiction. There's no way for me to make obsessive compulsive behaviors positive in my life. Period. I will become uncomfortable, and if I continue to act in these ways, I will become horribly unmanageable, and eventually I will use. And that's not what I want. I want the freedom that this program talks about, and that freedom only comes through surrender. and I don't know another way. I don't know how to service my way into better service work. I've got to stop, period, before it gets out of hand. And I'd like to say, well, it's time to talk to my sponsor, but sometimes my sponsor isn't the best person to talk to about this. But, the truth is the truth. But, I need to find guidance. I heard a wise man once said that, fear is not a motivator. God is my motivator today, and after I've surrendered, it's time to get right with God. And that comes back full circle to where I said, the most spiritual experience is when, group conscience, speaks, with the loving God, and so, it's almost like a fire drill, stop, drop, and roll. Well, stop and get with God, and it's amazing. It's all about, inventory, pray, inventory, pray. So, I don't know. Once again, I want to say, please, I hope nobody walks away thinking, stop the service. It is possible to do a lot of service without becoming, obsessed. I don't have to become the things I do today. And I'll pass.
Thanks, Cliff. I'm going to introduce our second speaker. I met her last year. She was a Sunday night speaker here and had a wonderful time with her last year and sharing and getting to know her a little better. And I know she's very dedicated to her service work. I hate to call her a service junkie, but it kind of fringes on that. And how I give you Lisa.
Happy Automatic. My name's Lisa. Grateful to be here. Grateful to be here clean. I'd like to thank the North Central Indiana Area Convention for asking me to share my experience, strength, and hope. Am I a service? Oh, am I addicted to service? Yes. Very much so. And that's just the most honest admission I'll make. I have been involved in service since I had 17 days clean. My story, I just want to give you just a little bit of the history so you can see why I am the way I am, or look, my justifiable reason why I am the way I am anyway. Before I got clean and in my active addiction, I was a partier. I threw a lot of parties. I entertained a lot. I always wanted to orchestrate things. I like to orchestrate parties, get the word out, do all those kind of things. Well, my sponsor said to me, you with your good planning, and, you need to do something constructive with yourself. She said, I got something for you to do because you have too much idle time. Because now what happened was when I first got clean, I wanted to go to bars every week. I'm still clean, I'm not using, but I wanted to go to the bars because I wanted to be in the atmosphere of excitement, And luckily for me, when I first got clean, I got clean November the 11th of 93, and very shortly thereafter, there was a convention in our area in January, so I had less than 60 days, and man, I was like, this is a party. How are they having a party without me? So, needless to say, I got involved with the convention, and I've been involved with the convention the entire time I've been clean. I started on the welcoming committee, and I've just moved from service position to service position to service position, and now I'm the chair, so I don't have anywhere else to go. So I'm sad to say that this is my last year on the convention, but I have some other. You're addicted to service when I'm already planning what my next service commitments are going to be when I'm done with this. One of the things that they told me, and my sponsor said, you need to get in the center of the boat so that when the boat gets rocky, that you have something to stand on. And I'm here to tell you that I was in a situation a couple of years ago, and all I had was service. So I was having service-oriented recovery as opposed to recovery-oriented service because it was my service commitments that kept me clean. Being committed to something. You know, and when we talk about like being addicted, you know, the obsession and compulsion, that obsession, that fixed ideal that takes us back time and time again to a particular place or instance to recapture that ease, that comfort we once knew. I knew how to have a party. I knew how to put something together. I'm looking for that same like adrenaline rush in recovery. Well, how can I do that? You know, how can I turn that negative thing into a positive? Well, you know, I get involved in service, you know. So now there's my obsessive behavior. Well, of course, with addiction, obsession is only one half of it. Then there's compulsion, you know. So that once I picked up that first one, when I started with 17 days on the phone lines, well, that just wasn't enough, you know. And then, you know, at 18 months, 2 years clean, I'm having 3 or 4 service commitments, you know. And I remember what happened to me. I had about 3.5 years clean, almost 4 years clean. I had an H&I commitment I had been doing for 2 years. I was involved in the convention committee. I was sponsoring 5 women at the time. I was hosting and the chair of this area function, this one-day workshop thing we were going to do. And at the time, I had a 7-year-old kid, and I had a relationship with a using addict at that time. And I went to Cincinnati to the NA birthday, you know, so it was right around July, and I was down there, and I was there thinking of what I could do to be involved. And it was a guy who was he was the chair of that particular fundraiser function, and he was trying to do it all. He wanted to be this and that, and, you know, he was directing traffic, and, you know, all his control issues were coming out, and, you know, and I'm sitting there on the other side now, knowing I'm the service junkie I am with all these daggone service commitments, and I'm looking at him and thinking how ugly this side of it is, you know, and like, I'm not like that, you know, and I don't ever want to get, and what happened is that I had to leave the function. Something came over me, and I hit a bottom, you know. And I was in the fetal position. On my way home, I had to leave that function, and I just started to get really overwhelmed because what I was trying to do is run from my recovery by being involved in service. And I remember calling my sponsor and saying, you know, I just can't do it anymore. I just don't know what to do. And she said, well, what can you delete? Now, I said, I'm addicted to service. I mean, I admitted that. Do you think the service commitment was what I gave up? All those service commitments? Of course not. It was the relationship that had to go. That's the whole problem. It's not my problem that I'm doing all this service. I'm giving back to Narcotics Anonymous. You know, they said you got to give it away to keep it. Well, I'm trying to keep it, you know. And so, like, I became, you know, obsessive and compulsive in service, and I came to hide in service, you know. I'm not at home taking care of my kid because I got to be at this committee meeting, or I got to be at that committee meeting, or, you know, we're having a function, I got to be responsible here. So, no, I can't take you to that game on Saturday because, you know, my service commitment is more important than that. And what happens to me if I use, you know, you wouldn't want that to happen. So, you know, I have to go to the service commitment. It becomes manipulation, you know, and then it becomes unhealthy, you know. I'm really grateful to say that just for today I only have 1 service commitment. Although I am thinking about what I'm going to do next, I only have 1. But my service commitment being a chair, I'm already, like, I'm the chair. I go to subcommittee meetings, right? Because I want to monitor, you know, how things are going, you know. I just have to have my hand in it. Even like here, you know, here I am doing service again. You know, it's like, okay, if you say you want to do something, I say sure. You know, who do you need to help? And what I know about that is that becomes like caretaking. And my grant sponsor always says that caretaking is the sunny side of control. You know, so it's like I want to be, you know, if you have a problem, let me fix it. You know, I can fix it. You know, they're not doing it right. If I was doing it, I was at a men's workshop at home last week, and I had to tape it, as a matter of fact. And so, you know, no women speaking. And it was funny because, like, the guys in my area, when I got clean, I hung around with guys. I didn't have any female support outside of my sponsor and some of my sponsee sisters. No females in my life. And so I have all these guys, and I have, sometimes I'm very male identified. And they were having this this topic, big head versus little head, you know, and so I'm taping this workshop, and then then it's silence because nobody wants to tell them their disease, and they're just kind of sitting down, and so the guys were looking at me. They was like, Lisa, you go up there, you share, and I'm like, no, it's a man's thing, and sometimes I just need to stay out of it. I'm doing enough. I'm taping it, and it's just funny how, it's like sometimes I need to say no, proper service is doing the right things for the right reasons, and if I'm doing it because nobody else is doing it, that's not the right reason. If I'm filling the position because I don't think anybody else is going to do it, and if they do feel it, then they're not going to do it as well as I can do it, because look, I'm trying to tell you, I can plan a party, and if I'm doing it for those reasons, then I'm losing sight of what the primary purpose is. Like it says here in the Just for Today, where it talks about service motives, it says everything that occurs in the course of NA service must be motivated by the desire to more successfully carry the message of recovery to the addict who still suffers. And I have to ask myself, is all the service that I do in Narcotics Anonymous always motivated to carry the message? Sure it isn't. No, sometimes it's for me. Sometimes it's just so I can get outside of me. And sometimes, and what has happened to me a lot of times, is it defocuses me from my own personal recovery, because I got all this other stuff to do, and it was a time when all I was doing, I was working second shift, and I wasn't going to any meetings, but I made every business meeting, every service commitment I had to show up for my service commitments, but I'm not showing up for me. I'm not showing up for my personal recovery, and that was some of the things that have happened for me. The one thing that I do want to say is that my service commitments and my addiction to service, and addiction is sometimes such an ugly word to use. I know you were talking about that, but the truth of the matter is that I can become overwhelmed. I can become obsessive. I can become insistent, and of course I can become operating outside of the group conscious and operating on solely ego. A guy asked me last year at the convention, and this is during the convention, and this is how I knew that I was in trouble. As he asked me, he said, well, we're having a conversation. He says, well, who are you? I said, I'm the vice chair of the convention. No, I'm Lisa. I'm an addict. You know what I'm saying? I lost sight of myself. Who are you? My whole existence is based on my service commitment. Who are you? I'm the vice chair of the convention. And he looked at me, he said, what? It didn't even dawn on me that I said anything wrong. It's just like, well, that's who I am. I'm the vice chair of the convention, and who gives a good care? Because I'm still the same addict that came in here with this disease of addiction, and now, like it says, the disease of addiction being all-inclusive, it will manifest itself in other areas of our lives, and mine has truly been a thing where it has. And a funny thing is coming up, because next weekend is my sponsee retreat. We go out in the woods, and the whole camping thing again, Woo, that was something. And I don't have anything to do. And my sponsor keeps telling me, oh, Lisa, you're really going to have a good time. You're not going to be responsible to do anything. You're not going to have to tape. You're not going to have to speak. You're just going to show up and have a good time. I said, I don't know what she's talking about. There's going to be something I can do there. Look, there's something that I can do. I have to be involved. And the thing that my sponsor and I talk about is like, Lisa, you don't always have to have your hand in it. I want to. I want to always have my hand. It's that caretaking, control. What is it? Am I, trying to be, my friend Ben used to always say, who you think you are, Miss NA? You know what I mean? And I don't, but at one time, you wouldn't have been able to tell that, because when I first got clean, I used to carry my books all the time. And I hung with these guys, so we called them our guns, So I would carry my gun, and I would be in a meeting, and you may say, something that's not in accordance with the traditions, and then I would come up to you after the meeting, with my book wide open, and I would spray you with the basic text, or spray you with it works, how and why, because, here I am, the NAPD, and I was in WISNAC, and I liked what they had on their shirts, Narcotics Anonymous Principle Defenders. I got to uphold the principles of Narcotics Anonymous, like the daggone thing is not going to survive without me. It was here before I got here, and if I pass on, it'll be here after me, and I don't have to, do everything and be everything and tell everything. My being addicted to service has caused me a great deal of pain in some areas, because I have an 11-year-old daughter, and she's developing, and I spend so much time outside of home. Well, not now, but I was spending so much time out of home because I'm in these service positions and I do what I do. I have to be seen at meetings. They can't say, oh, well, she's this, but you never see her at a meeting, because there are a lot of people in our area that get involved in service, but you don't see them making meetings on a regular basis. So, ego, here it goes again, can't let me not be seen. So I have to show up at the meeting so that people can see that, yeah, she's got the service commitment, but look at that balance. She still goes to meetings and this, that, and the other. And what happened is that my daughter had started to develop and experience some of the things of puberty, and I was missing it. I was missing her. I looked at her one day and her body was developing. And I was thinking, where the heck was I at when all that was happening? I was probably in a meeting or in a service commitment. My family, when I go to holidays and functions, I only stay there a very short time, because it's always normally something I have to do. And so my cousin said, well, Lisa, how long do you have to keep doing that community service? Well, it really is. I really am doing a community service by getting off the street, because I'm telling you, the way that my addiction was, I was headed for some things that may have taken a bad turn, but a lot of times I don't know what's going on. You can ask me anything, what's going on in NA, what's going on this weekend, who's going to be where, who's speaking where, who's doing what, and I'll have an answer for you, but sometimes you can ask me about my relatives, how's your uncle doing? Is he still in a nursing home? I won't have an answer for you, because I focus so much on recovery, that even on my job at one time, it was suffering, because of course, I like what you said, Cliff, about stealing and stealing, because that means when I'm working on my flyer, on your computer at work during those 8 hours that you're paying me for, because I'm addicted to service and I got to get this flyer just right, or I'm working on those raffle tickets for fundraising when I'm not even involved in fundraising, or I'm trying to call the printer shop so that you can make sure that the flyers get printed and I'm not involved in programming, or I'm not involved in registration, but because, ask Lisa, she'll do it, what I'm saying, that I'm stealing from my job. They're paying me for 8 hours. They're not paying me to be a member of Narcotics Anonymous and make raffle tickets and flyers or send emails so I can get information or look up flight tickets for speakers to fly in. All the things that I've done, on my 9 to 5. They're not paying me for that, and that's stealing. So okay, I said, well, what I'll do? I'll give back. I'll work an extra hour. But I'm salary. Not really making any difference. What I'm saying? I can work 20 hours. It doesn't make a bit of difference. It just, those are the kind of things that have told me that I am addicted to service, But I guess God has a way of doing things, because he put this topic here. Maybe it's some stuff I need to look at. Maybe I ought not plan for my next service commitment. I want to be the H&I chair, or and when I'm in the H&I chair, I want to not only do that, I got some GSR stuff on my home group level, because we don't get group representation at ASC. I need to do that. Maybe I will stop thinking about that stuff, And I don't know if any of you guys, if you're in here, you obviously like service, but if you've ever been to an area of service, where's the God in that? And if we're really trying to focus on, trying to be more God-centered and less self-centered, like it talks about in the literature, then I don't know if ASC is for me. Because it can sometimes get a bit hairy, because it becomes personalities before principles, as opposed to the opposite. And mine falls right in line. Because I have this addictive personality, and because I want to control some things, if something's going on and man, God forbid, you're making a decision that I know is just not right, oh boy, I will stand on a soapbox, chair, table, whatever it is, and they talk about in my area how ASC used to be so crazy before they stopped saying, like, bring your weapons, that they would bring weapons to ASC. Now we're not like with weapons, but sometimes some of the things, the questions that we ask, or some of the things that are said in those forums are like, they could cut you, with words. People are like dicing, slicing, and spitting you up as service commitments, and then they want to know, well, why do you keep coming back? And there will be times, when I would come from a convention committee meeting or come from an area of service and ask myself, why the hell do I keep doing this? What is wrong with, why am I taking such abuse? And it tells us recovery has choices. We have all these daggone choices. Well, how come I keep choosing to go in there and get beat up? Take this verbal abuse. If some of these mugs were my mate, oh my goodness. Look, I'd cut that zero and get with a hero. You know what I mean? I would just not have anything to do with some of these people. But because it's principles before personalities, I just keep coming. I keep showing up. My sponsor has not yet said, Lisa, you need not be doing, this in service or that in service, or why don't you take a year off service? And I heard you say take a sabbatical. Oh my God, what would I do with myself? I'm already thinking too, like, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself when I don't have a service commitment, I'm sure I'll find something though. Maybe go back to school like I've been desiring to do, or maybe spend some time with my kid and watch my kid grow up, because she's in puberty and she needs her mother. I've had failed relationships as a result of my service commitments, because sometimes your mate, even though they may be in recovery, they don't understand. Well, you got to be there that night, and then you got to be there that night, and then how come we never can go anywhere on the weekends, because you got to be involved in this function or that function. And I had a mate, in recovery, say, do you ever want to talk about anything else besides NA? Can we say something else that doesn't have to do with recovery? And a lot of times what I see is that I've taken my addiction, that used to be to a substance, and moved it right into recovery. And even though it's not causing me as much harm, but sometimes I don't look at the harm that it is causing, and I don't see the fact that, things are being neglected as a result of me becoming obsessive and compulsive with service. And I, like Cliff, don't want you to say, oh no, I don't, leave here and say, you don't want to be involved in service. I've done a lot of good work as a result. Somebody said to me earlier, they said, Lisa, you really touched a lot of people's lives, and you come in here and I try to show up and I try to help when I can. And I need to say that I've done all forms of service, not just being a chair person or what have you. I've done everything from, ashtrays, books, and chairs, to, greeting people. When you come in, I'm always focused on the newcomer. So it's not just that, I have to have some kind of title that goes along with my service commitment. All I just need to do is show up. I have to keep giving back, regardless of whether it has anything attached to it or not, because, this is how I stay here, and service work and service commitments and Narcotics Anonymous has given me life, It really did give me something to do with all that party attitude that I had, and that I wanted to have parties all the time. Being fundraising chair surely took care of that, and it's allowed me to stay here. I've not had to have another one of those episodes with the fetal position. I've not had to have 10 service commitments at one time. All I do is show up. If I'm asked to help, I will. I don't volunteer my help as much. you know, because I would go places, I'm all over doing this taping thing, and then all over in my own personal recovery, because I just like to go to conventions and I like to meet new people. And I would show up places and people would say, Lisa, what are you doing here? You know, you taping, you speaking, what are you doing here? I know you're doing something. And I would be like, you know, no, I'm just showing up. You know, and that's very rare, you know, that I go somewhere where I just show up. You know, I stopped going places for my own personal recovery, and I only went places because I might be working, taping, or speaking, you know. And I just want to get back to what made me happy in the first place. You know, just having a service commitment, you know, 1, don't need 20. Don't need to touch everything in service. Don't need to be in charge of this. Don't need to control the outcome, because that's what it's all about for me, is that I want to control the outcome. Because if I get in it and I make, you know, decisions, you know, and especially if I'm in the group conscious leading, you know what I mean, in the group conscious, not trusting on the loving higher power, but trying to make the decision, then I know that the outcome is going to sway the way that I want. And it's funny because a guy said to me on my service, on the committee, he said, as chair, you have too many opinions. And I got so offended. You know, I was like, how dare him say, I'm just sharing my experience, strength, and hope with you, because I've done that position that you're in, and I know how it's... And I probably do have too many opinions, you know, as a result. But, you know, it's like, the thing with this is that now that I've done this for so long, it's trying to like work myself backwards. It's trying to like come out of doing that, because I've been so used to, you know, being involved and doing this and doing that, you know, that it becomes difficult to reverse that role. And like, just like with my step work, and just like with my my commitment to the God of my understanding, is allowing God to drive, you know, and me to be in the passenger seat sometimes. Same thing with trusting. If we really consider them trusted servants, you know, then trusting that someone else will be able to do that. If I have put my trust and my faith and ensure that the message of recovery is being carried, then how come, you know, I can't take my hands off of it? And that's the question that I continue to ask myself. And I guess this workshop or this topic is one of those things that brought that into fruition. Like, okay, now it's time to do something. You know, now that you can admit, and as I was thinking about this topic, I kept saying, oh my God, you know, I really am addicted to service, you know, and how it's just not all this rosy and cakes thing, that there are some things that this has become, you know, on the side of addiction that's ugly, you know, but I keep showing up. You know, I think one of the things that happened to me is when I was getting out of a relationship, I needed more service commitments. And when I was in a relationship with a using addict, the only thing that kept me clean was my service commitments, because I didn't want to be at home. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to deal with life, you know. But at the same time, because I was so busy, it didn't allow me to work on the steps and do the change that I needed, so that when I got in another relationship, all I did was take me with me, you know. And had I been at home more or done more things to nurture my spirit during that time, I could have possibly done some work that didn't cause me to go into another relationship and take someone else hostage and cause someone else pain, because I knew I hadn't done the work, you know, when I left the last one. But thank God today I have time, you know. I do what I need to do. I still am involved with my service commitment. I'm still, you know, chair/fundraising, merchandising, registration. I mean, you know, but on small scales, you know, programming. I'm still soliciting. I'm listening for speakers this weekend, as a matter of fact. You know, I mean, I'm still all those things, you know, but it's not as flamboyant, because I can go from being like a spiritual, you know, person to like a grandiose, ego-inflated monster in like 2.2 seconds if you ask me the right question, you know. So it's just a matter of, you know, just trying to, you know, if it says, like, if I believe in what the literature says, that, you know, humility is the ideal state for the recovering addict, and if I listen to the concepts and what it talks about in the fourth concept about effective leadership, and how humility is one of those characteristics that need to be demonstrated in that leadership, then I need to remember that sometimes it's okay not to know. and sometimes it's okay not to go, you know. And that's just what works for me. Thanks for letting me share.
I'd like to thank both of our speakers this afternoon. I need to read this before we open the floor for sharing. I need to remind everyone that you're being taped. If you wish not to be taped, please let me know so that the tape can be turned off. I'd like to open the floor up from sharing. There it is.
You knew I would too. My name's Rick, I'm an addict. And like I've already heard shared here, my first service commitment came between 30 and 60 days clean. I became a GSR because someone said they needed a GSR. Didn't know what it meant. There's a different kind of meeting? Oh, cool. Let's check it out. I was GSR for over a year of my home group. Since then, I've been ASRA, ASR, meeting directory coordinator of a region, ASRA and ASR again. Currently, I'm ASR of my home area. I am a executive committee member of a convention committee. Most importantly, I am a concerned and actively participating member of my home group. And my sponsor family spread out, so I don't get to talk to my grand sponsor or my great grand sponsor that much. And a lot of what I know about the necessity of service commitment and my recovery comes from my sponsor. And when I finally got to talk to my grand sponsor and great grand sponsor about that, it was, oh yeah, definitely. You know, everyone needs one. Strongly recommended as a part of a balanced program of recovery. And then a little while later, as I'm listening to him share with other people, it's pointed out and emphasized in my sponsorship family time and time again that my most important service commitment that I have today is that concerned and actively participating member of my home group. You know, all the rest of that stuff, yeah, I can pretty much say I do that a lot for myself. You know, kind of keep my hand in, kind of keep on top of the situation, you know. But as far as selfless service goes, you know, I don't think I've ever been approached after a home group meeting and, you know, had someone I've known for a little while come up and say, "Hey man, good job with that newcomer." You know, I don't do it for that. After I'd been clean and, you know, GSR of a home group for a couple of months, you know, I talked to someone about not feeling connected. You know, how do I get connected? How do I start feeling connected to this program? And it was suggested to me that I show up at my home group 15 minutes early and without exception hug everyone that comes through that door. Introduce myself if I don't know and tell them I'm very happy to see them. You know, that's actually when I first started doing service. I heard Cliff and Lisa say a few times, you know, well, I showed up. It's been pointed out to me by people whose recovery I respect that when I show up, I'm doing a service to others. I'm being of service to NA as a whole. I'm definitely going to be of service to that newcomer, even if all I do is fill a chair. Show them that, hey, it's possible. You can look in my eyes today and tell it, you know. And I need to remind myself of that. Because in that progression of doing the service, you know, the growth comes when you do things like, you know, carrying a group conscience that you weren't happy with and doing it responsibly. without getting in the middle of it, saying, well, my opinion's this, but they voted that way. So I got to raise my hand against my will. That's not part of the deal for me, I couldn't do it at first. It took growth to do that, a lot of the conversations I have with my sponsor are service-oriented. It's for me an important part of recovery. But like my sponsor points out, if I'm in denial about something, how do I know it? How do I know if I'm addicted to service? Can I actually recognize harm to myself and other people by going to too many meetings? And the funny thing is I'm sitting there listening and adding up my service commitment for the year, that every position I've taken involves the most number of meetings, because I got to go to 12 area meetings and 6 regional meetings. That's 18. Okay. As BOD liaison this year for convention, I got to go to every convention committee meeting and every BOD meeting, and have been recently taking flack because I don't do meetings. But heck, I got them chairperson's phone numbers, and I can tell my opinion without being at that particular meeting. And one of the reasons I actually took that liaison commitment was for some kind of fluke that I'm allowed to continue to go to BOD meetings after the convention's over next year. And when they were talking about getting a committee together and presenting a bid, I said, well, if I was going to pick any of those positions, that would probably be it, not just because it's a responsible position of transferring information back and forth without coloring it with my opinion, which I'm kind of used to now, although I still don't like it all the time. But that little fluke about I can continue to attend BOD meetings and vote. After a few years of service, this is going to be my semi-retirement service position for a little while. I've worked it out. Be that concerned, actively participating member of my home group. I might even be able to talk to that newcomer a little bit longer because I don't have to rush off to write a report. But for the next year, I'm feeding my addiction pretty well. I think on the average, I'm probably going to be in a service meeting every 10 days until next March. Well, thank God I can do that today. I've been fired from service position for not being responsible. I wasn't responsible to that service position. The reason I got fired was I didn't show up 3 meetings in a row. 2 of them I was at work. The other one I was helping a still suffering addict try to get his life together today. Sorry. You got to fire me, fire me. That's their responsibility, And I have no bones about it. No, I have not completed all my service positions. I got fired. I got fired because I was trying to get a little balance in my life at the time. But basically, the point I wanted to make was that showing up is part of service. Filling that chair, if I have nothing to share, is part of service. NA wouldn't be anything without someone in that chair. And they wouldn't be anything without just having someone there to show me it's possible to do this and stay clean another day. That's all I got.
Thanks, Rick. Floor's still open.
Hi, I'm Bonnie and I'm an addict.
Hey, Bonnie.
I was told service was doing the right thing for the right reason, and most of the time anything that I do confer with my sponsor about, it's check your motive. What is the honest, true motive behind it? I was worried too about being addicted to service, because I do. When I get involved in something, I just fling it all in there. And I realized today it was because by flinging it all in there, I thought I had more right to be in control by doing that. Like at work, for instance, the reason to work my way up to the top is to have all these people beneath me. And I've learned at work that what has made work easier, because I'd be miserable at work, Nobody's doing their part. They're not doing it the right way. This should be filled this way. This should be. And once I got to the point where at work that I just do my job, just do my job. Don't worry about their job. Just do my job, and work got better. So anyway, I come around this program, and right away I learned that, there were a lot of people got clean and stuck around. And so it would be here when I got here, and I'd like to give that back somehow. And, oh yeah, I could put a table together and dump an ashtray, but that didn't seem like enough. I need to do more. But, so anyways, I found a meeting that didn't have a group, and there were some people that got together and decided that they'd like to support that meeting, and let's form a group. And I read the group booklet, and I love where it says that a group is an entity and a meeting is just an event. And so we're going to get together and we're going to have a group here, and we're real grateful to this poor girl who was given a key and asked to open the meeting by the person who started it, who went back out, and she just showed up every week, just kept showing up. She'd go to the area. And so anyway, so I'm going to get in this group, and I'm going to take a service position, but I don't know what to do. There's like 5 of us are going to form this group, and with the amount of clean time at that time and reading things over, well, a treasurer should really have some time. Come on, you know how you are with money, you don't need to be doing that. A GSR should have a year clean. I don't know nothing about area, but it sounds scary from what everybody says. So maybe the secretary, Secretary's got a lot of things to do, but what I got out of it is the success would be in it getting done without me doing it all. A way to involve other people. And I love my position in that group. We have this one little guy that comes in, and we made him the butt man, because we have a meeting in a church, and we can smoke in there, but they don't want any butts left in the church, and he's the guy that shows up 15 minutes before the meeting ends. So for a long time, he showed up every week because he was the butt man. And it made me feel good to delegate this little responsibility to somebody who really made him feel a part of. I loved what you shared about the addiction and the obsession and the compulsion and having this disease, because I have to remind myself that it is a disease. It's not something that I become addicted to, that it is this disease that wants to manifest and act out. And so I try to check my motives today. And we have a great home group. I have the best home group in the world. I've heard that on so many tapes, but I do. I have the best home group in the world, And sometimes I don't have the courage when I see personalities in my home group running around, and I think they shouldn't behave that way, but I don't have the courage to say anything. But, I've decided that if I'm going to be of service to NA, I've got to do it like I did in my job, and I need to first know, ask for help. No, understand, don't take a position if I don't understand the responsibilities of it. I need to understand the responsibilities of it before I say yes. Because then if I'll still make mistakes, but it won't be mistakes out of, just not finding out, And then just to do what I feel right about, And if I want to do something, I've learned to talk to my higher power and talk to my sponsor and really think about it. Don't just say yes. And to not worry about what everybody else is doing. Just to do it for the right reason for me. And if I don't like the way my GSR is doing her position and I don't have the courage to say anything, then forget about it. Let it go and just do my secretary's position to the most loving, caring way I know how. I have this sponsee I just took on, and she took a treasurer's position in this group, and she's carrying a suitcase in and out of the meeting. She's got all this literature, and they got like 25 black key tags, which I'm thinking, okay, those will be around a long time, and she's doing all these different things, and she's becoming really frustrated. So I had her read the group booklet, and I want you to write down everything that you're doing as that treasurer. Then I want you to read the group booklet and tell me what your responsibility is. And then to teach her that, The literature order, that says the secretary does that. What's going to happen if you don't order the literature? Well, none will get ordered. And what'll happen? Well, we won't have any literature. And what'll happen? And I said, will the meeting still be there? Yeah. Okay, well then let it go. Because, she was finding service unattractive. And I know what my true motive is for service, because I heard that there's blessings that come with service. And I want those blessings. And that's my true motive for service, is I want all the gifts this program has to offer. And there's gifts in service. And I know and I don't want her to miss those gifts, because she took a position that she knew nothing about, and unfortunately she has other people there that are letting her do all this because she will. And service shouldn't be like that, It should be a beautiful thing. And if I do something that I'm not feeling good about, I need to say no and walk away. Today, I guess if I sat here and named, I serve on the H&I subcommittee, and I go into a women's institution once a week, and I'm a secretary of a home group. Yes, I open and close different meetings. I'll go in and I'll set tables up, and I talk to newcomers, and I have a couple sponsees. And when I start thinking it that way, it does sound like a lot, but I feel good about where I'm at and not overwhelmed, and find that balance. And most everything else, I have to go way over here and do too much, or way over here and not do enough, and find the middle. And I'm glad that I have a sponsor that eased me into service, encouraged it, and talked about the gifts of it, but that, like anything else, not to abuse it and take it way over here. But anyways, thanks for letting me share.
Hi, I'm Carrie Amnatick.
Carrie.
Geez, I sound like everybody else here. A little bit, with a difference, with a twist. When I had 60 Days Clean, I started opening, I guess I was the group secretary. And I did that for 2.5 years, because nobody else would do it. And then I decided to be that group's GSR, and I went to area for my first time. And, everybody told me area was awful. I loved it. Okay, I did. I loved it. Yeah, was I insane or what? As far as that group, the group treasurer went into some kind of group where he couldn't come out, some kind of treatment thing. So I took that over. And then I became ASRA and ASR. And my last commitment as ASR is in June. And I'm done. I have again taken back the secretary position for my home group. Because this type of service I like doing is like last year we had a speaker for New Year's Eve, and they don't drive, and I drove all the way to Indianapolis to pick them up, and then the next day I drove down to take them back. And they called me a service junkie, these two people did. So thank God for service junkies. That's the kind of stuff I like doing. What I have found out, I love area, and hopefully one day we'll try that again. I like region, but I feel like I've gotten disconnected from people, newcomers. And I'm not happy with that, and it felt so good because I was going to, if there's not enough people take positions at area, I will go for something, Well, my higher power took care of that because there's only 2 open positions, and one's ASRA, and the other one's policy, and I don't want to do that. It's like, so, that's okay. I can, I'm going to give it a rest. Because I was isolating, and really getting into that service that I don't know. It's too political for me right now. I'm not too. I'm glad to get out of it. I really am. And for a while, you know, but I picked something else up because I am an isolator and I need to do something. But, you know, I love NA and I've been involved in service, but, you know, they talk about balance, and I want balance more than anything. I want balance. I too am a parent of an 11-year-old, you know, and I'm going to school, and you know I have a full-time job, and you know I am a sponsor and not a very good one. I'm not that available. I'm going to work on that. There are things that I want to work on, more one-on-one stuff than region and area, and so you know it's time to give it a rest. And thanks for letting me share. And with that, I'll pass.
We still got about 10 minutes.
Hello, everybody. My name's Donald. I'm an addict. I hold a service position now as GSR. I started it with less than 30 days. Started it coming back from a relapse. I had a sponsor that had nothing positive to say about area, but he directed me into this position of GSR. And I'm thankful for that. Because as a service position, it's not just been the service. It's opened up the avenue and helped me meet more people in NA. It's helped me broaden my base to find that higher point of freedom. Service has been not just service to NA, it's been service to myself. My struggle that I look to in the near future and as present is I'm looking at time that I was spending and putting into a relationship that's now no longer there. Initially it's like, okay, do this, do that, get involved in this, get involved in that. Bury myself in service. But I need to also realize I need a balance and need to take time of doing for me. Fortunately, our literature and guidelines in the service structure has certain requirements. There are certain clean time requirements for certain positions. So based off of that, I can't say, well, I can do that. Yeah, but I don't meet this requirement, so I'm not going to. And I think that's why we have them there. Because in actuality, if I were to take some responsible positions, I'm in actuality not really ready for it. I have the willingness to help out in everywhere, in any way that I can, to be that body there, to show up, to work and do the work that's necessary, but not take the responsibility of it, other than when I have the time and can be there, be there. NA has been and made a whole new life for me. It's a whole new family. With that, I am grateful. Thank you.
I'm an addict called Dan. I don't know anything about being a service junkie. I just had somebody tell me to come up here and share, so I gotta get honest. When I first came around, and probably the most important thing that I want to share today is that I still feel like Rick was talking about, the most important service position is the addict that keeps showing up at meetings, open the door. And no, I didn't take a break from that. I couldn't. I have a love for this fellowship. Lisa heard me say something before the workshop started about taking a sabbatical from service, and I took a sabbatical from area and convention committee. But I was still committed to my home group. I've got to remember the foundation of my recovery if I want to stay clean, and that is staying involved in the fellowship. When I first got here, back to where I started, I didn't have a driver's license. The closest meeting to my house was 13 miles, and they were telling me to make 90 meetings in 90 days. And I had a loving spouse that was committed and trying to help me get my recovery, fortunately. Yeah. She was a great service to me. But there was addicts there that kept saying, "Oh, if you need a ride, just call. If you get here and you need a ride home, say something. You know, we'll take you home." And I kept looking at them really weird, like, you know, do you know what you're saying? Do you know where I live? You know? And what I learned from all that over the whole time frame, looking back on it, and I've referred to this a lot long before now. The addicts that were saying that and are honestly willing to give me a ride home. And I found out later that the one addict that offered and was honestly, truly serious about giving me a ride actually lived just as far the opposite direction. And he gave me more than one ride home after a meeting. You know, and I've remembered that. You know, like we were talking about the service to the newcomer, being there, giving hugs, welcoming them, very important. And whether or not I'm a service junkie or not, you know, just to tell you, at one time I held 3 treasurer's positions, and they let me do it. Okay, I was a group treasurer, area treasurer, convention treasurer, and I'm married. Scary, you know, and I really. But on the other side of that, I would not trade what I've learned from attending area, being on subcommittees, being a part of a group of addicts, people just like me, trying to work together toward this one goal, having as many different opinions as what we do, and somehow or another getting the job done. You know, I would not trade that experience for anything. You know, I consider myself a control freak. I was sharing that a while back, and at an H&I speaker commitment, somebody asked me to share at a treatment facility, and I said I'm still a control junkie, you know, and they said, well, how do you deal with that today? And I said, I get paid for it. You know. So I've got to look at the things that my defects and characteristics. Are they a character defect, or are they just a characteristic that can be a positive? And being involved with these people in service has showed me a little bit about using some of my characteristics as a positive. Can I be a committee chair without an opinion? Man, that's tough. That's the hardest one. I I'm not sure. And my break from service positions, good. You know, and I was looking around to see if there's any committee members of this convention committee sitting in here right now. I know Don's involved some, but you know, and for 3 years I've become less and less involved with this committee because of some other personal commitments. And this year I've had really a lot of struggle with letting things happen as they are happening, keeping my hands out of it when it's not my business. And you know, it's been a growing experience to be on that part of my recovery. It is a big part of my recovery to see this about myself too, to be able to recognize those personalities, those characteristics. I'm not sure. You know, there were some things happening. You know, and I'm one to share that things happen for a reason, and I don't always have to understand the reason. And I was trying to be in a position to undergo a major project in my life, and to do that, I had to do a major time commitment toward that project. And in the process of being ready to do that, I was cutting back on my service commitments. And before I could do this major project, I ended up in the hospital on my deathbed, right, Brian? Right. You know, and he come to see me and didn't recognize me hardly. But because of me slowing down, I didn't have to resign from any service commitments because of that, because I had already started looking ahead toward a personal project. And when that illness, when that physical ailment was corrected, I was in a position where I could go ahead and approach this other project in line, and I'm living in that new house today. I really enjoy it, you know, and I wouldn't have been able to do that with the amount of service commitment that I had 3 years ago, 4 years ago. But I have a love for this fellowship that makes me want to stay involved, be a part of. And that was one of the first things that I thought about in listening to you share, listen to everybody share here. When I first got here, it was like I took the love of my life at one time out of my life, and I've got this emptiness, and I've got to fill it with something. I had actually been a part of something. You know, all my life I wanted to be a part of something, and I had become a part of this active addiction group. I had a group of friends at one time that was a big part of my life, to being a part of that family, you know. And to have people count on me to be a provider, or to be a example, even though it was bad, you know. And then to be here, and it really helped me to feel a part of again. You know, I needed that fulfillment of being involved in a group and being accepted in that group. And you know, the service really filled that. And I went to my first area service meeting 2 or 3 months out of prison. I was involved in service inside, chairing another fellowship meeting. You know, being part of that one, I wasn't even sure I wanted to stay clean yet. But when I got out, I had this desire to help H&I stay alive because of how much it had done for me. And I took an H&I chairperson position one time, just so they couldn't say that we don't have H&I anymore. And somebody was self-willing H&I at that time and didn't want to deal with the area, but wanted the H&I and was self-willing it. And we've talked about that earlier. There was good in that, but they wouldn't let me talk about supporting that H&I meeting until we had an H&I subcommittee. So I said, okay, I'll be the H&I chair. Now, are we going to support that meeting? It's been there for 3 years. Why aren't we supporting it? You know? And, you know, I learned from that too. But just to be able to feel a part of, and you know, I've heard other people share that one position led to another position, and I went in and I said, you know, I'm willing to help out. What can I do? And they give me a title of meeting schedule coordinator, and then the next month they said, well, we don't have a PI chair, and that kind of falls in the same area, so here's the stuff for that. You know? And I knew nothing, had no experience, nothing, but I was okay with wearing the hat. You know, whether I accomplished anything in that first year, I know that I did all I could do to try to keep meeting schedules updated, and that was my primary goal. And it was so frustrating because, like I said, I did all I could do, and I'd bring a new meeting schedule to an area, and somebody said, "Oh, by the way, that meeting changed times, or it moved." You know, you know anything about that, do you, Rick? Nah. But I myself can't do anything, and that's what I probably the thing that's been enforced the most through service, the we aspect of this fellowship. And you know, if I haven't learned anything else, trying for so long to do something myself, you know, to keep that H&I meeting going, and back to the service addict or addicted to service. That's the topic of this. And I look at that, you know, and I look at my addiction. I look at other areas of my life that my addiction affects, and when I do something in excess or obsessively to the point where it causes harm to myself or others, then I may want to take a look at whether I'm addicted to that or not, and whether it's an obsessive compulsive behavior, and that's what's been really helpful for me here in the last couple of years of being able to step back a little bit. And this weekend somebody asked me at lunchtime, and I was still dealing with this issue that took place, and I was powerless over it, and I didn't want to admit that, you know, and having already considered getting back involved with this committee, am I going to allow that issue to affect my commitment to this function or to the growth of NA as a whole? You know, I wanted to share my experience right then, you know, and this is the way it's got to be. We learned that the hard way. Why don't you know that? You know? And then I stop, and I know that there was a lot of addicts in this fellowship that give me space to grow, and still give me space to grow, that allows me to be reminded before, play the tape through, and be reminded before I hurt somebody else, or hurt me or somebody else in trying to force my will on a situation. I'm grateful to be clean, and I'm grateful for service work because I know that it's been a big part in my recovery. Even though I've been obsessive about it at times. And it's a control issue for me. That's all I got.
I'd like to thank everyone that came up and shared, and the speakers, and we need to end this workshop.